Hey there, welcome to the Girl Go Global podcast, where faith and works are empowered. With every episode, we're embracing our multi-layered lives with faith, know-how, and grit. I'm your host, Dr. Jasmine, and I'm ready to go global with you. Let's get started. Welcome to the Girl Go Global podcast, where faith and works are empowered. We are the community where we are empowering women to join their faith and their works to live the courageous lives that God created them to do. And so today, I'm so excited to have my co-host with me, Miss Tiffany Reneé of the Tiffany Reneé Card Collection and the Muse and the Messenger. She's my girl. You already heard from her in episode 1. So don't forget to reach back to that episode to hear that conversation about what it means to go global. Like, we dropped some gems in the episode. So if you haven't listened to it, I suggest you roll that back, run that playback and listen. But today, our episode is sponsored by my book, y'all. My book, Heart Rhythm: Surviving Singleness with Faith, Know-How, and Grit. So we are talking about singleness today. We're talking about love. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about manifestation of their purpose partner, y'all. So stay tuned for this episode. And Tiffany, tell the people hello.
Hey, girlfriends. I am back. I am so honored to be back. This is so awesome to be able to have real life conversation with my good girlfriend and share it with the world. We always used to say we was going to do this. Like, we should have shared that with the world, but now we really are. So shout out to you. Shout out to that book, Heart Rhythms. I still think it's a good read. What is it, like a year and a half, 2 years
later? We published this in December 2020 in the middle of a pandemic.
Almost 2 years.
How about that?
I think it was a very good read. I loved how you were transparent. I loved how you were a straight shooter in the book. And, I love stories. So I loved how you shared the different stories of the experiences that you went through. So shout out to you. And again, I am glad to be back on the mic with you.
Thank you. And I'm so glad to have you. Today, this conversation is going to be pretty interesting because we're going to reach back, I guess, to about 2015 to some conversations there, and then run it forward to now. I'm talking about relationships and this idea about surviving singleness, about thriving in singleness. And you may have heard from me in a few episodes, just me talking about, I didn't do well with surviving singleness. Well, in my singleness, I would say, particularly because I was all over the place emotionally, and I just wasn't healed, and I was attracting what I talk about in my book, the wrong type of man for me. The most complicated parts of my being allowed me to attract those men who were the representation of the most complicated parts of myself. So I talk about in my book about how I attracted overly emotional guys, fatherless guys, rejected guys who felt they were abandoned, but then the flip side, I also ran into some pretty dope guys and some pretty interesting guys, but because of things with them or things with me, things didn't work out. But I just want to talk about today a little bit about when we were back in the day having conversations about our men, dating, relationships, and all that, because we kind of traveled together for quite some time now. So I remember we were back talking about, I gave you this book that a good friend of mine gave me, and it was a prayer book, and it had all of these prayers in for different situations, for healing, for jobs or relationships. And in this book, there was a prayer about, if you wanted your future spouse, a prayer for your future spouse. And I gave you this book and I said, hey, you gotta read this prayer because this prayer is dope. And in the prayer, it was a line in there and it said, let my husband relocate to locate me. Child. That prayer at the time, it hit the spot, and we chatted it up. We laughed, we talked about it, but I want to talk about how that prayer came to fruition, how it manifested, and how all of our conversations about relationships have now evolved into a new season and a whole new day.
Yes. It's so funny. I'm over here geeking a little bit. Too bad y'all can't see us visually, but I'm geeking because that prayer actually, like, it really came true for the both of us.
How about that?
I can remember when you met your spouse and he wasn't your spouse yet. And we were talking about where he currently lived. And I remember bringing that prayer back up, like, okay, Lord, relocate him so he can locate her. And he did. He moved from one state when he was dating you to the state that you were in and married you.
How about that?
And I think that's awesome. And I almost was like, oh man, that didn't happen for me. And then I had to think about it. Yes, it did.
Oh man.
Because I relocated to Atlanta. What I didn't know was the same year that I relocated to Atlanta, my partner relocated to Atlanta as well.
Oh my, how about that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he relocated to Atlanta as well. And the same year. And then we met some years after we both relocated here. So it's kind of wild. I think what's special about our relationship at the time that we met was, one, we were looking at life from totally different vantage points. I had just got divorced.
Okay.
You were single. And so we were looking at things totally different, right? In the beginning. And then like a couple of years passed, and then we both were on the same page, like, wait, this is what I want. And I think you were more sure about what you wanted at that time than I think I
had been single longer. So you had, you already tried it out. Had tried it out once. So
yeah. And I was supportive of that because I do believe in the sanctity of marriage. And I also subscribe to what marriage was created for. Right. So I wasn't that person who got divorced, was like, oh, I'm never getting married again. I was that person like, I need a moment, but I'm gonna get back out there in a minute. Give me a moment to recalibrate. I need a moment to recalibrate. And just to put things in alignment, for what I thought that I needed. And then just to kind of be in line with what, God had for me. Nice. I didn't want to block anything from coming my way because of leftover feelings or inconvenient feelings is what I like to call them a lot of times, inconvenient feelings. So anyway, so, I needed that pause, but in the midst of my pausing and having fun, because that's what I was doing, having fun. And you actually were positioning yourself to receive what it is that you actually asked for.
Yeah, I, for sure. I had went through a terrible breakup. Date myself here back in, I guess it was like 2011. It was a terrible breakup. I guess kind of got ghosted and, some other stuff had transpired. And I was just like, God, this ain't working. I thought it was a potential possibility. And then I was like, you know what? Something ain't right. I'm not right. I'm not attracting the type of man that I know that you have for me. And so I took a strategic pause. And when you talk about, we often say, you got to get yourself together. I literally did that before I jumped back out there in the dating pool. Everybody doesn't do that. But that was for me. I was so hurt that for me, my mind, heart, or spirit could not take a breakup. It literally could not take another breakup. So I decided to take a strategic pause and figure out what was best for me. And that meant being single for like 5 years. I dated, but as far as being in a relationship, and I did meet a few people who I thought might be good candidates and good catches, but for me, it was more about, okay, God, let me clean house. And that meant cleaning me up. That meant going and searching myself, figure out who I needed to forgive and figuring out who I needed to heal from or what I needed to heal from as relates to childhood hurts and a whole bunch of other stuff, which you can read in my book. And it had a faith enough to say, okay, God, I'm going to start praying for my husband, which I did. And that's how we probably ended up with this prayer book. Someone gave me the book and I started praying this prayer about my husband. And I have to say that when I did meet my husband, he said he was in a long-term relationship. I think he said it was in like a 3 or 4 year relationship. I said, oh, because I was praying. I was praying that the Lord break up the relationship that he might be in. Hello, I was praying that he literally told me that he couldn't figure out why he and this girl kept breaking. I said, oh, because I was praying. I was in my living room on my floor praying for my husband, and I petitioned the Lord to break up my husband from being in a relationship that was not meant for him, and to do all kinds of healing in his life and to help his business or help him in school, whatever. I tried to cover all my bases. Even prayed for my future in-laws, because I know people have issue with in-laws. So you can be specific with God. Hello, that's that faith aspect of where I live with this whole Girl Go Global podcast.
That was bold prayers.
Yeah.
God honors bold prayers. That's what I know for sure. And I think some of those prayers happen on our lunch break with the door closed.
Yeah.
On the floor of the office. Like, I remember those times. And I think you brought up a really good point. One thing that we need to be very specific about is what we were doing and why we were doing it. Jasmine was in a place after her healing that she wanted to be in partnership again. Mm-hmm. I was in a place where, and you wanted to be in partnership to get married.
Yeah.
I was in a place where I wanted to be in partnership, but I didn't want to get married at that moment.
Yeah, so, I get it. I mean, rightfully so.
The reason why we were right. So the reason why we were dating, the purpose, our purposes were different. They differed. But in the midst of all of that, I saw the desire for your desire for that which you sought out. Where I didn't have that desire. Eventually down the line, I got it. I got it. And I shifted how I behaved, and I shifted how I was moving, because I wanted to now align with the purpose that I intended.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's something really important to kind of point out.
But talk about what made you shift. Like, I know, obviously I wouldn't think that most people who come out of a divorce, come out of a relationship, want to jump right back into a marriage typically. Okay. But what made you shift, what changed your mind, and how long did it take you to change your mind?
Well, it took a while. So I'm gonna date myself a little bit. I got divorced in 2013.
Okay.
And
that was fresh when we met.
Yeah,
I didn't realize.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't start focusing on the fact that, okay, I want to be married again until within these last three to 4 years.
Okay.
So it was a gap, because I would have been divorced for almost 10 years, right?
Okay.
And so the last 3 to 4 years, I would say. So I guess I took a 6-year hiatus.
Yeah.
And I just was doing my thing. And it's crazy that you were saying, like, your husband was like, oh, I didn't understand why I wasn't working out with this girl. And you were like, that's because I was praying. Because when I started praying, I was very specific. Like, God, I want exactly who you want for me. But these are things that I would like. These are my preferences.
Okay.
But, but I want to be in your will, and I want exactly who it is that you want. So if that person is living in a situation that's not in alignment with what your plan is, align it. Mm-hmm. it's funny because my partner, who I believe is my partner on purpose and in purpose, we got married the same year, we got divorced the same year, and we moved here the same year.
Oh my.
Yeah, so there's a lot of correlation or whatever. And I think I'm a believer, so I think that God had a lot to do with that. I don't think that God wastes anything.
No, for sure.
And I do believe that we had to go through what we went through with someone else in order to be who we are today, in order to be in the relationship and the partnership that we're in today.
Yeah.
And his experience and my experience was not the same, like at all. Like he, you know, I remember when I first met, I used to be like, why y'all not still married? Because it just was like, y'all are easy. Y'all are super easy. Why y'all not still married? Yeah. And, you know, like he gave me, you know, his reasons and they were understandable. And it wasn't anything bad. It was just, you know, time and things of that nature. We both got married pretty young and had children and, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, my partner and his ex-wife are really good friends. Like they are really, you know, they have a really good relationship. So I just think that just to kind of circle back to that, like when something is supposed to happen, it will happen.
Yeah, we just gotta be ready to receive it when it happens.
So and stop trying to control.
How about that? That takes me to, you know, a conversation that I had with my sister when I was dating my husband. And I was just kind of, you know, going back and forth, like, I don't know, Lord, is this the one? Because, you know, I'm still traumatized from other experiences, or I'm still just trying to guard it. And my sister said, do you want a man or not? You got this good man over here. He want to be with you. Do you want a man or not? Okay. So, you know, we got to be ready to receive the blessing when the blessing comes. We can't give it away.
We can't. And a lot of us almost do or do. A lot of us almost do or do.
True.
And I can think, you know, before I started seriously dating my partner, I did a lot of work. I did a lot of work to make sure I wasn't bringing in nothing old into the situation.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of self-reflection. I did, you know, I explored where some of my feelings were coming from, feelings of abandonment, feelings of rejection. And I remember people used to be like, girl, who rejected you? And I'm thinking like, it's not surface level rejection.
Yeah,
it's not surface level rejection.
It's just a different type of rejection. You know, it's one thing to have heartbreak rejection, but there are other forms of rejection.
Yeah, like my parents got divorced when I was a teenager. You know what I mean? And you know, it changed the family system. It changed the dynamics of how we operated. And I looked at that as a form of rejection. You know what I mean? I looked at that as a form of abandonment. And I talked to my dad pretty frequent, you know, on today, you know, but back then it felt like that. And so when it's rejection that is caught up in your marinade. So I look at how we were raised, right? I call that your marinade, your experiences, the things you went through, what you were taught at a, you know, younger age. That's your marinade. What you witnessed, that's your marinade. And your marinade, whether shows up in present day, it shows up unless you address it, unless you decide like, you know what, that's an agreement that I no longer agree to. Let me revamp that. Or that's a negative schema that I no longer subscribe to. Let me revamp that. Let me change. Let me reframe that. So I did a lot of reframing in preparation for this relationship. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know how it was coming. And I was a safe dater, right? I dated people who my people knew already. right?
Okay.
I didn't
That's a
date
good way to
like,
date, you know?
I didn't date a stranger. I needed somebody who was connected. So, you know, if this person was shady or did something shady, someone else besides me could hold them accountable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but my partner, I met him as a stranger, which is
Mm.
totally out of my comfort zone.
Do you want to tell the people how y'all met? Are you ready to tell the people how y'all met? Not
Okay.
yet. Not
I
yet.
will tell. I don't mind. I don't mind. So it's quite, and he knows this story. So I'm not sharing nothing with y'all that he don't already know. But I had a friend who was like, no, you should try it. You should try it. I was like, I don't think so. So my assistant was like, oh yeah, you should try it. And I'm also a homebody. So I had girlfriends like fussing at me like, well, how you gonna meet somebody legit if you don't even go outside? And I'm like, I do go outside, but you know. So anyway, so they convinced me. I was like, okay, fine, but I'm not doing it. I'm not gonna do it. Y'all can do it. So they pulled up. The first thing I got on was, I think, Bumble, but that was too much for me. And I messed around and met somebody that I had already dated before on Bumble. So I was like, nah, that's the omen. Like, you know, thank you.
Oh,
why am I meeting him again?
I guess I don't
And
even know
legit,
nothing about that, but do you put in your criteria? And I
so
guess
yeah, you put in your criteria, but with Bumble, like they can't talk to you unless you like them.
so that means you
So
did
I should
like
have
them.
just passed it. I did like him, but I just want to be like, what are you doing on here? You know what I'm saying? Because it
Okay.
wasn't like somebody who was out of my life. He was still around. We were friends, but it was just weird.
Okay. That's funny.
So anyway, and in Bumble, you have to like initiate the conversation, and I can be extroverted when I'm intending to.
Okay.
So you know, I'm like, I'm starting a conversation first with this person. But anyway, Bumble was too much for me, couldn't do it. So my friend came back like, no, you got to try Hinge, because every day I was like, I'm quitting this, I'm shutting this down, I don't do this. So she's like, you gotta try Hinge. I was like, well, I'm not creating it. So my assistant actually ended up like creating my profile on Hinge. She picked the pictures, but she did ask me the questions. And so I got answered the questions, and Hinge seemed a little bit more like, I think the concept behind Hinge was it was created for you to get off the app. So, so yeah, so I did that or whatever. And I dated two guys off of the Hinge app.
Really?
One of them is my current partner.
Okay.
But yeah, so yeah, I dated two guys, and it was crazy because like, I don't know, he said something like he had unicorn vibes. And I'm like, what you know about unicorn vibes? You know, now I'm intrigued, right? And then to come to find out, his best friend, who's a female, told him, you know, he was ready, like, I'm not ready to share everything I built with somebody. And so she was like, well, do it on a dating app. Like, you can weed out people really quick, because if y'all don't have something in common, y'all not going to even meet. And if y'all do have something in common, maybe, you know, you can, you know, build upon that. So he did it, and it was crazy, because I was like, I prayed, like, God, remove. Then mind you, I'm dating this guy. I'm dating one guy, and I meet him on there, but I don't really pay him any attention because I'm dating this guy, you know, and we're having a good time. We're enjoying each other's company. And I prayed this prayer one night, like, God, just remove anybody that I'm not supposed to build with.
Okay.
Everybody started dropping.
You like, wait a minute, I ain't mean it that quick.
I was like, not like this. But I had been praying specifically for certain things. I was praying for a house. I was praying for a partner. I was in that frame of mind now.
Okay.
Like, okay, this was fun. Now I'm ready to settle down. I also wanted to give my son an example, show him what it's like to be in a healthy relationship, and, you know, what love looked like, you know, love actualized. Right. Yeah. So my focal points had changed. They had shifted. And so that's what I was praying. And so I remember, out of nowhere, the guy I was dating for like the last few months, out of nowhere, it's like, I really like you, but the way my life is set up right now, I don't want to cheat you out of experiences, and I don't want to cheat you out of time.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, like, well, thanks for honoring your truths, you know.
Yeah. Well, at least he told you and didn't
Okay.
ghost you,
He
or
did. No, he didn't
he
ghost
didn't
me.
have
He
to
didn't do
tell
anything
you.
like that. And so he told me, I was like, thanks for honoring your truth. And he was like, this is what I'm talking about. What female you know going to be like, thanks for honoring your truth? They're going to be like, well, who he got and what he doing? And I was like, well,
Listen, at this point,
that's
it
not
don't
my
matter.
character. That's not my character. I heard you loud and clear. You said you didn't want
Listen,
to
one thing I
pursue.
know how to do is listen.
Right. So I moved on from there. And so that was like in February, March. I said, well, I'm going to just focus on my house. But in the meantime, I have a friend that I am working out with on a regular basis because, you know, this is the pandemic and this is right in the beginning of the pandemic. And so I'm working out with her. And when we would go for our walks, which were virtual walks, we would pray for our spouses and pray about what the experience would be, right? And just like speaking gratitude. So what I know is that gratitude is the catalyst that moves intentions to fruition.
You stay dropping these little nuggets. You gonna put that in the Tiffany Reneé collection too?
Actually, I could.
You gonna write that down?
I'm gonna write that down. Gratitude is the catalyst that moves intentions to fruition. Manifestation is what happens in between intention and fruition. Okay. So we were just being grateful for things that had not happened yet, but things that we wanted to happen. So we would talk about it as if it was so. And pray about it as if it was so. Like, thank you, God, for my husband. Thank you, God, for blessing every business venture, every, you know, whatever, you know, we were just speaking these things. And so we did that. And then, so in March, I decided, you know what, I'm buying a house. Literally decided March 1st, I was buying a house. March 16th, I had an offer on a house. April 16th, I was closing on that house. And then April 17th is when I connected with my current partner.
Okay.
And so we talked and we talked on the app for like a month. And then we started, moving. We would move off the app, talk on the phone, FaceTime, whatever, which was different, for me. Like, I can't believe I'm talking to this man. I ain't even met him, but I'm talking to him, consistently. And then I remember my birthday was May 12th. And then like on May 14th, we went on our first date.
Okay.
And he's been around ever since. And it's been over a year. It's been over a year. But so that's how it happened. Shout out to Hinge. Appreciate
shout
you. Shout out to Kiana and
Jacqueline. One of the things that I guess, we have in common, obviously is our faith, but, this whole idea about praying intentionally, but at the same time, doing the hard work, doing the work on ourselves to ensure that when you are presented with that manifestation of their spouse or anything else, that you're ready to receive it. Right. And then, this whole idea about out of the box thoughts and doing things outside of your norm.
Outside of your comfort zone.
Outside of your comfort zone. You decided to go online. I think I had prayed a prayer, I guess when I was in my late 20s, and I said, Lord, now let me backtrack. I want to just say before I get to that point, I felt like in my late 20s, I heard the Lord say 35 for when I would meet my spouse or get married or something like that.
I remember you sharing that with me.
And I said, at the time, I was like, God, I'm in my late 20s. I don't know how old I was. I was like, that's too long, Lord. That's too long. No. But I met my husband at 35.
Wow.
Yep. And so my birthday's in May. We met in September of that same year. And I said, I guess after my birthday, I said, all right, God, I'm 35 now.
Let me hold you to your word. Let me hold you to your word, right?
I'm 35. And we met at the Congressional Black Caucus. And by the way, for those who don't know, is the CBC is in DC, generally in September each year, with all of the politicals and thought leaders in government and politics and Black economic power, etc. But so it was a fun time, and there are lots of men to be met. Hello, but having said that, that's where we met. I met that weekend about 3 to 4 different guys, and he was the one that stuck.
He also set himself apart.
He did.
He set himself apart.
And
I do remember that. And I remember the phone call I got when you met him. And I remember the recap.
Yeah, but I had no idea when we met that we would be at this point. None. I just thought he was some guy that I met at the conference. So, but I will say this. When I was getting dressed to go to the event with a friend, and she had slept over at my house because we had to get up super early. So she said she was going to stay over so we can just hop in the car and ride over to DC. And I said, girl, I was getting my purse. She has come in my bedroom. I said, y'all ready? You ready? And I said, let's hurry up so I can go meet my husband. I was joking. Like literally, I was joking. I promise you, I was joking. But I met my husband that same day.
But you know, people who are master manifestors.
Okay, honey.
All right. People who
put the words master manifestor.
You know, I love a good alliteration. But people who are master manifestors have to be intentional about what they say because it will happen, right?
I have learned to be careful what I say because I know that my words have life and I know that they happen. And so I got to be very careful what I say. And sometimes even what I think. Hello?
Yeah, I know. I definitely have to be careful what I think. You know, so I say that you have to be very careful. One of the things that I remember thinking was like, God, can you take the guesswork out for me? Like, I don't want to have to deal with that. Like when I meet the man I'm supposed to be with, he gonna know before I know.
Please.
And I used to say that all the time. Well, he gonna know before I know. He gonna know before I know. And I remember on our first date. Now, mind you, I had been doing all this work. I realized like I had to release like rejection and abandonment. I realized that, you know, I was so busy operating in survival mode from things that happened long time ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was operating survival. And so a lot of things as females, what we don't realize as women, what we don't realize is that, you know, something may have happened in our life where we had to go into survival mode to make sure we survived, right? To make sure we got through it. But we're supposed to let that mode go once that is over. Mm-hmm. And what we tend to do, especially as Black women, is we stay in that mode, not realizing that we're still in it. And then we come to a quote unquote soft situation because I'm here for the soft life, right? We come into a soft situation and we're still stuck in survival mode, and that no longer serves us. So it works against us. And so I'll be transparent moment. I was still in survival mode from years, from childhood. I was still in survival mode, and that's how I was operating. And I had been speaking this, that when my partner meets me, he will know before I would know, that he would be ready, that he would, you know, take all that mixed signal, all of that out of the equation.
Don't even get me started on that.
I'm not a fan at all. And so
listen, I
remember on our first date, shout out to Ponce City Market Rooftop. We
ATL.
we went to, first of all, I let him, and I'm not saying that people should do this, I let him pick me up from my house, which I never do.
Well, I let my husband drive me home.
Right. So
the first time we met.
Exactly. I never do that. You know what I mean? Like I never do that because remember, it takes a long time for you to get my trust. So I never do that. I could be dating somebody for 6 months, 2 months. They never know where I live.
Yeah, especially not on the first date.
Right. So, but
I never used to do that.
I let him pick me up. I just broke I broke the rules, my own rules that I had made. And so I let him pick me up. And when I remember getting in the car, I said, you know, this is a trust exercise, right? And so he says like, well, since it's a trust exercise, can I change where we're going? So I'm like, okay. So we go to this rooftop and we're having a good time. And it was just like so many different things, which I like to call God giving me a glimpse. God, so God glimpse.
Okay.
My person Chevy always says, "Oh, God's just giving you a glimpse," you know. So God gave me a glimpse, and it was like little small things. Like at the top on that rooftop is like all these carnival games. So he was playing like skee ball, and he had won. And something that we had said, like we were talking about our vices on the drive there. Like, what's your vice? And I don't know about y'all, but Krispy Kreme is a vice for me. Donuts.
Oh, really?
Donuts is a vice. Like I can't just eat one. So I said donuts and whatever. So he won the skee ball against these strangers that we don't know. He won. And so the lady's like, "Oh, pick out your prize." We turn around and the prize is a unicorn. Remember the unicorn statement?
Yeah.
God, in the shape of a donut.
Oh my.
And so like, he was like, "Look at that." And I was like, "Oh, wow." So of course I got that. But so when the evening was winding down and the rooftop looks over the city. And so we're looking over the skyline, which is really beautiful. And he says to me, "Wow, do you feel that?" I'm like, "Feel what?" And he's like, "There's like connection, or there's something, you know, there's like a connection between, like, I feel energy with us." And me being in survival mode and also in protect mode, used to fighting for everything that I've needed or that I wanted to hold on to, I say, well, you know, my guards are still very much up. So
you said that to him?
I probably don't feel what you feel. and I said that, and at the moment when I said it, I said it.
I'm surprised.
Looking back at that,
from you.
Looking back at that, I was like, girl,
I'm saying it now, girl.
Thank God for Jesus, because
he could have walked away from you like, this chick is cray.
You know, right? If he wasn't in tune, you know, and what I later found out is that like he was very much in tune. Like I wasn't the only spiritual person there that night, you know.
Okay.
And so he was in tune, and he reacted so like what I wasn't used to. Okay. And he said to me, he kind of chuckled, and he said, "Okay, you are still, you're apprehensive and scared," is what he said. He said, "You're scared. So you take your time. I'll wait for you." And I was just like,
did he son you?
He sunned me in the softest, loving way. He was like, but he told me, he was like, I know what I feel. I know what I'm feeling. So you take the time you need. I'm gonna wait on the ledge for you. And he did.
My, I like
and
that.
He did. And I mean, like,
you should have did him like Whitley did in that episode. "Come here, daddy."
I didn't.
I just world.
I just was like, okay, whatever. Like I just shrugged it off. And when I went home that night, I kept replaying that scene because I was disappointed in myself. I was disappointed in myself, but I could not stop hearing what he said. And I was just like, oh wow, like, and that's what made me realize, like, girl, why are you surviving? You don't need to survive right now. Just thrive. Just thrive. Like, you know, and I always say, like, this is a calm love, right? It's a calm love. It's a very peaceful, calm. It's fulfilling, and it's spontaneous, but it is calm. And that was different from me.
But one thing I know about you, I think that moment when he gave you those words, for you need someone who can spin those words just as well as you can. You know what I mean? He checked you in the way that you would check somebody else. And I think that my girl need that little time sometimes.
What the Jill Scott said?
What?
If you can't tell me what to do, you can't tell me what to do. But if you can tell me what to do, you can tell me what to do.
And you like, okay.
And the crazy thing, what I said to him was later on, I said, you made me pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I'm saying.
You made me pay attention. Like when you speak, I listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm used to being in charge, right? I'm used to being in charge and I'm used to being in control. And what he said to me is, the problem you're having is that you're not in control.
Mm-mm.
And he was like, and you're used to being in control.
Yeah.
And once you realize that you can't control this, we will be fine.
Oh my, checker. I'm liking it.
And I was just like, it was the way he talked to me. You know?
Oh my.
If you can tell me what to do,
Woo,
you can tell me what to do. And he was right, though. He was right. And he used to say, but you don't know what you want yet. I know what I want. I'm clear on what I want.
Let's see. Let's run that back real quick, because I'm pausing because it's tough out here. I'm pausing for the lady, the woman the girl who like, he ain't married me yet. He ain't make a decision about me. Whatever the case is, like, I'm pausing because when a man knows, he knows. And if it's taking him, Rain said, let you know what he wanted first date, basically. Dude let you know what he wanted first date. So I'm just pausing in this moment to kind of reflect. Like, if you gotta figure it out, and if he not level setting with you right away and what I mean by right away, it could take him a few months, few days, few weeks, or even a year or so to kind of figure it out, but they know. And if you in that relationship and it's been 2, 3, 4, 5 years and they still don't know what they want to do with you, I got a whole problem with that, because I ain't about that. Because I think I recently on one of my episodes recently talked with Kayla Walter about faith-driven singleness and financial planning, and in our conversation we talked about decision making and making those decisions. And I just wanted to pause in that moment to kind of like sit in that for a minute, because when a man know, they know. Like my husband said, he told me, like, literally, when you find what you're looking for, you stop looking.
Facts. See, it's the surety for me.
Yeah, it's the certainty, surety, like, and the clarity. Like for me,
he was very clear. It's so he was very clear. He was very sure, and that had been the first time. Like, it had got to the point where I was like, tell him, like, I don't know if I said it to you or another friend. I was like, girl, I think I'm the toxic one. I was just like, wait, what happened? Like, I ain't the toxic one. And so, you know, I've experienced situations where there was no certainty, there was no assurity, there was no clarity. And I mean, I'm not knocking it. I learned a lot from those situations, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because nothing is wasted. Nothing. I learned a lot from those situations. However,
period, comma, however,
comma.
On the other side,
I applied what I had learned from those situations, right? I applied. And the crazy thing is, I remember telling someone that I was dealing with right before I met him, I was saying to them, because I mean, I was dating in the short sense of the word. Like, I believe that dating is when you date multiple people, you know, to see which one you want to build with. So it's a clarity for me. It was the certainty. And I've been in situations where there was no clarity. There was no certainty. There was nothing I could be sure about, you know, outside of that moment that we were in that moment. But I had changed my perspective. I had changed my mindset. And I had decided, I remember telling a guy, like, listen, when the man finds me who's willing to give me what you give me and what I want, that's what I'm going. That's the direction in which I'm going, you know? And, you know, I remember them saying, like, that'll never happen.
Oh,
like that would never happen where I wouldn't, I would just cut them off and go with somebody else, And I'm like, okay, you wait and see, because I had made up my mind on what I wanted, and I wasn't sure before. And then I started becoming very sure and clear of what I wanted, clear enough to write it down, clear enough to pray it, clear enough to be grateful for it. And it hadn't even happened yet. So when this man, and so just to be clear, our first date was way after we had been talking for a while. Like we were communicating for a while before we had a date, So it was over like maybe 2 months, it was over sometime, maybe a month and a half. We had been talking. So when he came in person, so it was like, okay, I get to see him in person, and he's so short, and it was intimidating because I'm used to being the short one. I'm used to being the lion, and now this man is telling me it's something about, and I know this is a touchy subject, like being submissive and all that kind of stuff. That's super touchy for everyone, gets hypersensitive about that word. But, submission doesn't mean you're being told what to do.
No.
Submission doesn't mean that, whatever you want, sir. Is that coming to America?
Right.
That's a form of submission, but that's not what it means for me. Yeah. It's when you talk, I listen. Or I shut up. You know what I mean? Like, I want to hear what you have to say too.
Yeah.
I don't just want to hear myself. And he did that for me. And I mean, he still does that for me. So, I don't know. I think it's very, and I know you've known me for years now. And I'm sure that my other friends, when they hear this, will be like, OMG, that girl must be in love, because I am super private. And I don't talk about my relationships. Like, I remember when I introduced him to my mom, she FaceTimed my sister in front of him and says, I met Tiffany's boyfriend. And my sister says, oh, he does exist.
Oh my.
Well, he is right there. And he laughs. I mean, the work he does, he travels a lot. And, he's a businessman. So that's what happens. But yeah, so so they're like, I had a friend like, you got to be in love, because I don't think you ever introduced anyone outside of your ex-husband to your family. And I know you ain't been over there by yourself. Like, I know and I'm like, yeah. My son, when my son met him, my son was like, shout out to you, and dapped him up and was like, you the first boyfriend that I ever met.
Oh my goodness.
That's
I mean, it must be something serious. So let's kind of talk about, the Girl Go Global podcast, and we around here talking about faith, we talking about strategy, we talking about courage and grit to manifest our lives. And so I want to just talk about really quickly what it feels like to have manifested what you wanted. So for me, it's a breath of fresh air, and I'm like totally relieved that all the tears I cried were worth it to get what I believe is a matchup from heaven.
Yes, matchup from heaven.
Listen, so like, I feel like I've been in what do they call it in those countries where you get your match, your placement for your mate. What do they call it? I don't even remember what it's called, but I feel like
yours was prearranged.
Yeah, I've arranged a kind of like a kingdom prearranged marriage from the Lord, because it just kind of effortlessly kind of came together. And I remember this one time, this lady prayed for me at like a women's conference I was at, and I had just gone through a breakup, and she pulled me off to the side, and she said, and she kind of read me, if you will, saw into my life, and she said, the Lord says it doesn't have to be this hard. I said,
I would have lost it right there.
And I did. She said, it doesn't have to be that hard. And another thing she told me is, the men you are dating are beneath you. Oh my.
Mm. Mm. That's a
So,
reality check. That's a reality
man,
check.
so what I was trying to make work, trying to force anything, I have to say, for me, it was the lack of force for me. It was the, ease of it all for me, because I know people believe in struggle love. I know people believe that they have to, put in a lot of work to make a relationship work. And I understand. And I'm not saying that you don't, but what I'm talking about is to kind of get together, make it all these hardships and, argument. I mean, for me, obviously in relationships, there are challenges, you coming together, different personalities. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about those things that are a given. I'm just talking about the coming together of two people for a relationship. And if you bring God into the mix, he can give you instructions for how to learn your spouse or your significant other in ways that make it work. With God is the 3-strand cord in that relationship.
You said something, agreed. And you said something that was really important to me, especially when manifesting, praying about this relationship before I even knew who it was going to be with, was I focused on flow. I wanted something that would flow, nothing that I had to force. Like, I didn't want to do that. Like, I've been in those forces before, and that can mean multiple things, but I've been in that before, and I just wanted something to flow. And, like, it was just key things that was coming up. Like, when I said, he's like, well, then you say you wanted a relationship that would flow. You didn't want anything that you had to force. I'm like, I did say that. He's like, okay, well then flow, like stuff like that. And so I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, there was a certain level of ease. There was a certain softness to it,
Yeah, I don't know what other people's testimonies or thoughts are on it out there, but for me, I ain't with that struggle love. And I don't mean, what I mean by struggle love is, let me caveat. I understand building financially, building legacy and all of that. But I'm just talking about just arguments, fussing, fighting. Y'all not seeing eye to eye. You bumping heads. You're like oil and water. That's what I'm talking about.
But you said something really important, struggle. So what I've learned over the last few years, and this is recent learned, right? Struggling is unnecessary. And what do you mean by that, Tiffany? Right? Struggle is unnecessary. We're choosing to struggle. Like, if we just go along with what is flowing, there won't be a struggle. So that means that it may be you letting go of someone or something. If we just go along with that, we won't experience the struggle. It's when we hold on to it because we think we know what's best and what's, the greatest for our greatest good, which that's not true. We all know that, right? And so I've learned, for me, struggling is unnecessary. Now, don't confuse struggling with challenges, because challenges come, right? Life is an ebb and flow, but struggling is unnecessary. Because if you just go with the flow of a thing, then you won't have to struggle. When you're struggling, you're going against the flow.
The blessings of the Lord maketh rich and addeth no sorrow. I'm going to leave that right there.
Okay.
But the manifestation, when I think about the manifestation of all that I pray for, when it comes to a spouse, it's just kind of relieving. I'm thankful every day that God have blessed me with what I pray for, and that I had the courage to say yes. I had the courage to wait for the man that the God had designed for me. And I'm thankful that I had the courage to do the work, to prepare to be a wife, particularly because I am an ambitious woman. I'm professional. I've acquired a lot of things prior to being married, and so for me, the stereotype says, or the social construct says that, after 35, you might not be able to have those things. But I'm a testimony to those out there who are waiting for someone that they want to marry, that it can happen. the Lord specifically told me in my 20s that 35 it would happen. For whatever reason, I don't know. But we also got to remember when we are dating that we also got to pray for our spouse, because while we may be ready, they might not be ready for whatever reason. It could be tons of reasons why they are not ready. So you're not in a relationship by yourself. So if 35 was my appointed time, as the word says, if that was my appointed time for that season of my life, I can't go against what God says, and I just got to wait on it. But it could have been for a number of reasons. It could have been because he needed to be at a certain place in his life so he could come to this event and so that we could meet. You know what I mean? We have to take an account for so many things, because I think sometimes women say, oh, I want to be married by a certain time. But while I want to point out that, okay, you might be ready by that time, but are they? So,
and then you might think you're ready. You might think you're ready and don't
I thought
be ready.
I was going to be ready in my 20s, but nah, I would have messed all of that up.
Yeah, because you gotta look. Did you have enough self-love in order to love someone else? Like, let's start. I love. Marriage is. It's cool if that's what you want, right? It's cool if that's what if that's what your desire is. Yeah. I shouldn't say want depicts a lack. If you desire, right? If you desire, then that's cool. But everybody, that's not what everybody wants.
Sure.
So if you do want it, you have to make sure that you are ready. What does that mean? Like that you have enough self-love for yourself. You have enough love in yourself and for yourself that you have extra to give to someone else. All right. People be trying to jump into relationships and they want somebody to love them and they don't really love themselves. and they don't really love themselves, or they don't even know what makes them happy because they're not really sure about it.
Right. You gotta be happy by yourself.
That's one thing I really started doing.
People can't make you happy. They don't fail every time.
But they can add to your happiness, but they can't make you. That's not their responsibility. That's a personal work.
Right.
And so I think, people get that twisted. Also, like, I started doing what I wanted to be done for me, for myself. So I love fresh flowers. So what part of my self-love journey was once a week, I was buying myself fresh flowers. Like I had a couple of friends who were like, you go to your Trader Joe's yet to get your flowers? You go to Trader Joe's to get your flowers. So I would buy myself flowers. I would take myself, even if I was uncomfortable with it, out to dinner. Because those are the things that I wanted. And, dating myself, getting to know myself. So when someone could approach me and be like, you don't know what you want, that would not be true. Or so, and so you got to think about those things. And I just think about all of the work that I did on self before I started focusing on someone else. Like I did internal stuff first so that I can show up externally. And I think that really helped. The other thing is, the last podcast we talked and I said, like, I have my birthday prayers. A year before that, my prayer was, God, blow my mind. And in one season, I got the house that I desired, the partner I desired.
Say so.
And the expansion of my business that I desired.
Come on here. Won't he do it?
Talk about blow my mind. You got to be candid and you got to be transparent about what you want and be clear. You got to be clear. And so I think that's where, my manifestation, which is the work that I did, what I spoke over, things to get me to the fruition of what I intended. Like that was a full-blown hard work operation. You know what I mean? Like, I put in work. And I started having the hard conversations with myself. And I think a lot of us, those are the hardest conversations to have. Is what you have for yourself. We want to make it someone else's responsibility and hold someone else accountable. Part of my work that I did to manifest what outside of what God did, because God put some super on the natural. However, what I did was I did the work on self and had the hard conversations with self and addressed some of the hard things that I needed to with myself.
Yeah.
Before I could even bring anybody else, because if you got mess, that mess gonna spill over. And even if it was a good thing, it could make it more challenging because you refuse to acknowledge and deal with. So I think we have to really, when we're talking about all these good things and we're talking about what we desire and things of that nature, we also want to desire to be whole spiritually, whole emotionally, whole physically. And that takes work.
Tons.
That takes work, so that when you do meet that person or your paths finally do cross, that you are ready to receive. You and I both know you have to be a certain Jasmine, a Tiffany 2.0 or whatever it is in order to receive certain blessings, because they'll be too heavy for you to hold.
Yeah.
And then you can mess it all up. You could just, what do they say? Throw your pearl to the swine.
Yeah. So this has been so good. We've been talking. I've been talking with my co-host today, Miss Tiffany Reneé. We've been talking about love, relationships, and this whole idea about how we let our husbands find us.
You prophesied
and manifest us and manifest the relationship that we wanted. But you're standing right in the midst of the prayer and the revelation of what you prayed. And so I'm so super excited about what's to come for you. I'm 3 years into marriage and being happily married. We survived the pandemic and some other things recently. So
congratulations.
We are stronger than ever. How about that? Because some people did not make it out of the pandemic.
And I think
they came out with COVID free and without a spouse. How about that?
Right. I think the other thing is it's good to, I don't tell everybody in my business. I got a few select good girlfriends that I could talk about these things with, right? Because your friends are for different things. But if you don't have a good girlfriend to talk to about these things, pick up a book. And I think Heart Rhythms is a really good book. So if you haven't read that book, go ahead. And if for nothing else, the stories are good, honey. The stories are
yes,
good.
honey. Heart Rhythm, Surviving Singleness with Faith, Know-How, and Grit is available anywhere books are sold. And I'll be so excited to have you let me know how you enjoy the book when you do purchase. Write me a review or reach out to me via my website or info@jasmineleemorris.com. I love to hear about what you thought about what you read. So having said that, this has been the Girl Go Global podcast where faith and works are inspired. I've had with me my co-host today, Miss Tiffany Reneé. We talked about relationships. We talked about love. We talked about how we healed and manifested the loves in our lives, not the loves of our lives, because God is the only love of my life, but the love in my life. We talked about how we manifested those things, and we will be back very, very soon. Miss Tiffany will be back, and I look forward to continuing to heal, grow, and learn with you all, because we are embracing our multi-layered lives with faith, know-how, and grit. Talk soon. Go global, girl.